The broadcast is now starting.
Hello, everyone. What in the worldwide world of sports is going on this Thursday? Thank you so much for joining us and joining today's episode of the Pixmo webinar series and today's offering of maximized collaboration with Microsoft Teams for mid-sized to large organizations. Boom! It's going to be an exciting one today. As always, my name is Michael Wells. I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager here at Pixel Mill, and I will be your host for today's session, as I always am. If you haven't joined us before, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you here. If this is your second, third, 15th time back, thank you so much for coming back. We're so happy to have you back. Thank you for always joining us. A couple of the usual quick webinar things that you're used to. If you have any questions or comments that you want to throw our way, I'll be keeping track of those during the session while our speaker is talking. There is a questions tab and a chat tab that should be available to you. Feel free to throw your questions and comments in there. I'll be keeping track of those, like I said, and we'll get those questions answered. If for some reason we're not able to get to questions during the session, we do try to leave a little bit of time at the end for Q&A to get to those questions to make sure that stuff is answered. So we'll definitely get to you as best we can. Without further ado, I will stop rambling because I'm really good at that. Today's speaker is a very familiar face for our webinar series. He is also the president of Pixel Mill, president and co-founder, and a Microsoft RD and dual MVP. I always forget to say he's a dual MVP now. He's a really cool guy, and really you're going to have a great time with him today. Welcome, Eric Overfield. Take it away, sir.
All right. Thank you all. Michael, let me know if no one can hear me. All right, this one's going to be a fun one. I've really been enjoying this topic for a while now, and I'm looking forward to going over this with you for the next hour or so. Looking at how to really maximize and utilize Microsoft Teams, primarily focusing on the medium to large size organizations. That being said, utilization of Teams is kind of, anybody can use it. So if you're a smaller organization, you're still going to glean 99.9% of the material here. There's just some things that the mid-sized and larger organizations need to think about. When you've got 100,000 employees or 70,000 employees and you're trying to roll out Teams, there's some things to think about that we really want to get into. So some of that, the housekeeping components, first of all, the lower right-hand side of your screen should be a link to download this deck. For those of you who know me, I'm a 300 level, 400 level deep dev. That's what I love to get into. And it's difficult for me to do 100, 200 level because I want to get in deep to code with you. We're not going to do that here. We're going 100 level, 200 level, but those of you who know me, again, I like to provide the details. So the slide deck is got a lot of material in it, and there are a lot of links in it. If you want your guide to utilizing Teams for your organization and getting started, you need to figure out how to set up a champions program. I have got the links for you in this deck, so definitely go ahead and download this slide deck. If you forget about this and you're finding this later on, we will have a blog post on this as well, or if you found this through a blog post, you should find in our show notes the link to the slide deck as well. So hopefully you'll be able to get that material. What also is really interesting, so for those of you who are joining us live, where this is taking place in the later part of March of 2019, not an hour before this, Christian Buckley, a fellow RD MVP friend of mine, hosted a tweet jam on private channels in Teams. Teams in general, super hot topic. I think this is going to be a big thing for the next couple of years as organizations continue to roll out Teams. And there's definitely some room for improvement on the platform itself. So let's have fun with it. Please go ahead and ask those questions. As Michael said, he will do his best to interrupt me as often as possible so that we can go ahead and try to deal with your questions. I wish I could say that I was the senior expert in Teams. There is none. Teams is not that old, so some of these questions you're going to definitely have to bear with us and wait with us. Okay, so for those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Eric Overfield. I am president and co-founder of Pixel Mill. I am a Microsoft regional director. I'm a dual Microsoft MVP in the Office apps and services and Office development spaces, which is really that merger for me in my personal life where I'm a dev at heart, but I'm dealing so much with the business use cases now, and I'm dealing with the senior leadership of a lot of organizations. So I'm trying to merge the two very well, where I understand where the products are going and why they work for organizations. But at the same time, I know deep down what's going on in the code, because that's where I love. That's my happy place. When I get my 10 minutes a day where I've got something to do for myself, I'm going to go into code. Yes, I am that kind of geek. I work a lot with the community in Office, SharePoint, Teams, etc. You can find me a lot at SharePoint Saturdays or speaking at conferences on this. I have some conferences coming up at the end of this deck. We'll go over those so you can know where to learn more about what's going on in the world of SharePoint and Teams and whatnot. You can always find me at ericoverfield.com or at ericoverfield. And I've written a couple books that are now getting a little older, but they definitely were a lot of fun to write. That was in the Sharepoint 2013 days. So for those of you who are newer to Pixelmill, just a quick little blurb on who Pixelmill is and who's sponsoring this webinar. So what we do is we provide digital workspace solutions for the clients that come to us looking to really drive that utilization and adoption of solutions on top of Office 365 and SharePoint and Azure and Microsoft Teams and whatnot. So if you're looking to really utilize Teams, if you're looking to build a portal or solution for your organization, yeah, please let us know. We look to tailor all of our solutions to our clients' specific needs. We're not providing you just a canned solution saying, here's the only way to do it. Absolutely not. We want to work with you and find the right solution for you. Okay, so what are we going to go over today? Some really, really fun stuff to me. I need to start at a baseline.
Hey, Eric,
Yeah.
Real quick before you jump into that, we have someone asking where that slide deck link was. Can you go back to that real quick or reshare that? Or do you have a link for it yet?
I'll leave this up for 5 seconds because you'll be able to get the slide deck at a later time as well. That is case sensitive, so it is a capital E, capital O, capital T, capital O, capital M. So do make sure you get all that. All right.
Gotcha. And thank you, Starkey, for pointing that out. And also, Eric, I'm sure you're going to talk about this, but there's a question already from our friend James Sloan. What's the ETA on opening chat and a separate pop-out? Is that something you want to address now, or do you want to save that for later?
I probably will forget later, so let's go ahead and deal with that. There are going to be a lot of questions I'm sure you've got about when a feature is coming in Teams. I actually do not know the answers to that, and if I did, I probably couldn't tell you. I do not know that. So basically, the idea I believe in this question is, basically, when you're in the Teams client, and we'll see this, everything is stuck within the context of what you're doing at that moment. If you want to have a second chat, you have to go to that chat, and you have to go back to the first one if you want to get back to it. Or my general use case, I'm in a OneNote working on a particular client project or something, and then someone comes in and chats with me, and I need to go ahead and communicate with them. To go back to that OneNote, kind of painful. I mean, it takes a couple clicks, and I just want to click on another tab, maybe like a browser tab or something. I know that Microsoft's well aware of it. I know that they're talking about they're doing it. I'm hoping very soon. I would hope sometime in 2019. I hope in the first half of 2019, but I do not know. I'm not even trying to, send you any signals. I actually do not know. Very, very highly requested feature for sure. Followed up closely by private chats. That's, and we'll get to that. But private chats are the highest ranked request that I'm aware of. I believe that the tabs is right up there with it. So that's kind of that overview. I do want to go over the overview of Teams because some of you may be new to it, or I just want to make sure we all understand the value of Teams and what it's for, how it fits into Microsoft's view of their communication and collaboration platforms. I really want to look at those usage scenarios. I think this is one of the big questions I get. What's Teams do? Is it basically just Skype? No, it's significantly more than Skype, and that's really where this mid-sized to large organization components come in. Again, if you're a smaller organization, I still think you'll drive a lot of value. Pixelmill, we're a small organization. We're well under 50 people. We use Teams heavily in almost a similar way as a mid-sized or large organization would. It's just we have a much smaller IT team, and we have a far fewer teams that we have to worry about because we have a smaller team. I want to talk about rolling out Teams. So how are you going to drive that adoption? By rolling out Teams properly. And then organizing and templatizing Teams, I think, is really, really important as well. So we'll get into that. And then finally, extending and customizing Teams. This is either going to be a 20-minute conversation or a 10-hour conversation. We'll definitely fit it in our hour. But I'm hoping you see there's a lot of really good content here. I think the outlines are really good and packed. And we can go over so much good, fun stuff here. So, of course, we need to start with the basics, and that would be, let's look at what Microsoft Teams is. What is it as its specific platform? And when we just tear it down to just a few words, it is a chat-based communication platform. That's what it's for. It's designed where you can have text-based, chat-based, now videos and audio as well, but really a chat-based tool. So the idea here is that you can quickly create these conversations and these meetings, these ad hoc meetings, these scheduled meetings. You can get together. You can have a persistent chat where you've got a collection of people who are communicating and collaborating and whatnot. You can have internal and external people involved in these. So you can have somebody where it's a team of people that need to come together for a specific project, or maybe you have a department that wants to always be able to communicate with each other in a more persistent, threaded sort of a way. And you would like to be able to have some quick ad hoc conversations, some voice conversations, a meeting room-like experience, something like that. Teams is the platform that Microsoft is now looking at to enable those kind of communications. When it comes down to it, effectively, I mean, Teams is Microsoft Teams. We're going to have some fun with some nomenclature here because we're going to have the Teams team. We're going to talk about sometimes and figure that one out. That is a valid statement, by the way. But Microsoft Teams is Microsoft's answer really to Slack and HipChat when it was around before it merged with Slack. And there are definitely some features in Teams that are not really in Slack and vice versa. I'm sure there's a lot of Slack users out there that aren't ready to move to Teams for some specific use cases. I do understand that. I do think that over time, we're going to see Microsoft Teams to really start to overtake what Slack can do. And I'm looking forward to that for sure. Although I don't use Slack. I'm fully on Teams now. Microsoft Teams is absolutely designed to be on any device anywhere, so it's both mobile and desktop friendly. You can run it in a browser, you can run it in a desktop client, you can run it in a mobile browser, you can run it on a mobile. There's a mobile app as well for major iOS and Android devices. If you want to get started, I did provide a link for you, and this is where, really to me, download the slide deck. I've got the links in the deck for you. I wouldn't keep taking pictures because there's 15, 20 links that I'm going to be providing. So really, Teams overall, it's a chat-based platform. All right, okay, well, so don't we kind of already have that? And the answer is kind of, but definitely not really. So I think the next logical step is then, okay, well, so how does Teams fit in the Office 365 ecosystem that Microsoft has created for communication and collaboration? So there's a couple of key pillars here. Yeah, go.
Hey, Eric, right before you jump into that, let me throw this question out there and see if this fits into what you're talking about now. Question from a friend, Sydney Thornton. Yeah. Can you discuss the risks of piling too many files and subfolders in a document library? You want to save that for now? Or you want to answer that? Or save later answer
that? Great question. I love it. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but let's bring that up again when I get into Teams, because where you're getting to that is that every time you create a channel in a team, you're effectively creating a new folder in SharePoint. And if you put too many files in those folders and in SharePoint document libraries, you hit this 5,000 limit. And what's the issues with all of that? So
I will save it for later. Yeah. Sydney, we will get back to your question. I'll save it for later.
Questions coming, and don't hesitate to think, oh, maybe it's premature. No, please get those questions out there so we can be sure to address them. And by the way, if we don't get time to address your questions in general, we always do put a blog post out, and we always look to answer all those questions in much more detail. So I'm definitely going to do everything I can to provide as many detailed answers for you as possible. Cool. Okay, so within the ecosystem of Office 365, one of the real pillars of most all of Office 365 is our Office 365 groups, because that provides a group membership. That's our security model that we're using to create the teams that we might have, the group of collection of people that we might have to be able to do something. Groups are primarily there to help us with the collaboration, the discussions. The groups have their own email address through Outlook, but basically the way I look at groups is that's what's our underpinning of everything within our Office 365 collaboration and communication. So that's sort of on its own because you need groups, and no matter what to me really happens or what other components you might use, you're basically using groups. Okay, so we have email. We've had email for a very long time. Email isn't going anywhere. I will readily admit that. I kind of wish it would, but realistically, I mean, email definitely for external communication is a must. You're not going to be creating a chat platform because you want to talk to a contractor about something, or if you need to just do a one-off email to say, hey, what's going on with my travel arrangements with some external vendor. That might not make a lot of sense. But so what email Outlook provides, of course, is our email and our calendaring. They provide distribution lists as needed and our event scheduling. But really, to me, email it is a one-to-one communication normally. There's a point-to-point. I mean, of course, you can have your CCs and whatnot. But it's antiquated, and when you start to add more people in, it can be very difficult for them to understand the thread of the email. I mean, they might be able to go back and look at it, but it doesn't provide a very rich collaboration platform. And I've found for sure, definitely at Pixelmill, we've cut down our internal emails really to zero. And even when we get an email that comes in maybe from a client we need to talk about internally, we'll post that into Teams and have that discussion there, and then we might email the client back because we have a much more rich environment somewhere else. All right, so let's look at SharePoint, of course. A lot of us are SharePoint people. That's, of course, where we come from, and my background over the last 10 years has really been in SharePoint. SharePoint is about storing our data, our lists, our libraries, our documents, things like that. It's for file sharing. It's preserving components long term. So SharePoint, it's great. It's not a good spot to be having, say, a conversation on something. It's a great place to be having our actual files and our assets and the things we're communicating and collaborating on. And of course, a lot of platforms are using SharePoint as its backend data repository. In particular, in Microsoft Teams is storing its files. So when you have a team of people that come together and you have your channels, we're going to discuss all of that. The file communication collaboration that Cindy was also referring to, that's all stored within SharePoint. Now, there are a lot of organizations out there that are coming to Office 365, not because they went through SharePoint, like a lot of us did do. They're coming to Microsoft Teams first, and they don't have the history of SharePoint necessarily. They don't need to know it's really SharePoint in the back end. What they care about is those files are back there, and that's completely fine. Teams works perfectly fine without having to worry about what SharePoint is. It just knows that there's files stored somewhere, and I can share those files. By the way, that's all powered by SharePoint. Now, Skype for Business. Okay, Skype for Business and Yammer, the next two, really is where Teams is starting to encroach upon. Now, Skype for Business, a lot of us have been using that. That's for our voice and our video communication. And we, of course, can have our online meetings. We can have telephony set up with it. Skype for Business has given us that kind of in-room, same-room experience when we are remote, when we want to have a communication with somebody. Now, effectively, Skype and Teams they're merging. I mean, we're just seeing that publicly. They're coming together over in Microsoft's hierarchy. They're under the same department now. That's public, and they. It's not to say, I'm not at all saying that Skype's going away, and I don't even know, but it's more that Teams is really replacing that. And I think it's kind of obvious too, because we can see that Teams is able to offer basically everything that Skype is able to do, including the telephony component. That being said, there are many organizations that have invested a lot of money on Skype for Business. It's not going anywhere. I mean, Microsoft is still fully committed to it, and it has not been deprecated that I'm really aware of in any way. It's just we're seeing Skype for Business and Teams definitely coming together. I would recommend that if you were new to all of this and you were saying, hey, we also want to have telephony, I would suggest you look at Teams. That's the future, in my opinion, rather than Skype for Business. But it's still a very valid platform for your general voice and video and bringing together some people. Now, Yammer, on the other hand, okay, so Yammer is really about enterprise social. Yammer is also fully supported by Microsoft. It's still growing. They're still adding features to it. Yammer is about creating communities. Not so much like ad hoc communications and not so much little teams getting together and doing things. It's more about one-to-many communications. I found Yammer most popular in organizations where executive leadership really wants to be able to communicate with the organization as a whole, where it makes sense to have this one-to-many. And I found Yammer most successful when typically the president, the CEO, the founder is heavily involved in that. And that's what they find their ability to communicate with their entire team, their entire organization effectively. And then a lot of people, of course, want to be where the leadership is, and so they'll migrate over to Yammer. And Yammer still is a great place for that enterprise social. And because of some of the limitation of Teams, I can still see Yammer being very valuable for that larger network building in larger organizations over that 2,500 limit, because there's some limits in Teams we're going to get to near the end. That will get in your way. So then we get to Teams, which of course was what we're talking about. Now, what we talked about there is it's a chat-based workplace. It's really designed around chat, although you can have meetings, you can have video meetings and voice meetings and external meetings, etc., with people. This is about all that high-velocity collaboration where I need to quickly be able to communicate with people. I don't need them to stop what they're doing and have a 5-minute conversation with me, but I've got a question for them, or I've got a question for a group. Hey, how do you do this? I'm running a team, and I want to be able to quickly ask the team who might be available, does anyone know the answer to this question? And I don't want to email everybody. That might get buried or something. I'm not going to get a Yammer because it's not that big of a community here. It's just more of a small team. And it's about putting that together. But then if I'm working in a channel, I'm working with this group, and I now need to talk to them, I can quickly just meet with them or start up a meeting right there, and whoever can join me can then quickly join me, and we can have these communications. It overall provides this general workspace, that digital workspace that we've been all sort of talking about. Teams is looking to provide that true cockpit or portal to our overall digital workspace. And I see some really good things I think that teams can do over the next 1 to 3 years as it becomes a more solid platform and offers some more base things that we're all looking for. I can start to see where I'm going to be migrating away from a browser-based experience for all of my communication within my organization. I'm going to stay within Teams. And when I need to go to a classic portal or intranet experience, I might be doing a lot of that in Teams through specific channels that are designed for those kind of communications. Good. So if we want to look at the overall components of Teams and sort of rounding out Teams, because we've been talking about it a lot, like what does all this all mean and how does this all work? So effectively, Teams, Microsoft Teams is broken up into two kind of general areas. There's teams that you can have, a team and a team. Typically, the team, within Microsoft Teams, we would just use a lowercase t for that. So if I'm going to create a team within Microsoft Teams, I might use capital T, meaning Microsoft Teams, and a lowercase t, meaning a team within Microsoft Teams. Within a team, that's broken up into channels. So a team itself is a collection of people, and in and of itself doesn't enable any kind of communication. That all happens in channels. You must have channels within Teams in order to have actual communication occur within that group of people. Now, on the opposite side, or kind of on the side of Teams, there's another thing that's just chat. You can have ad hoc chats with one or more people. And they're separate. A chat is an independent thing that just lives out there in perpetuity or dependent upon your policies, but it's on its own and it does its own thing, and you can have a chat with one person or two people. And there's a thing that we really want to be able to do where, so in my company, I might have a chat with my senior leadership, and we really say, okay, hey, this has been going well. A few of us have our persistent chat where we chat, but we really want to promote that to a channel within maybe some sort of like SLT team or something like that. And that's definitely a highly sought after request for Microsoft, which is, can we take a chat and turn it into a channel? And the value here is we want the persistent conversation of the chat migrated over to that channel. So that'd be really cool. So those are the three, to me, like big pillars of Teams, where you've got a team. Within team, you're going to have channels. And something that's sort of like a team but is separate is something just chats. It's these just persistent one or more people would get together and be able to have just a little conversation not associated with any kind of team or channel. Now you can also have meetings, so you can quickly spin up meetings in chats. You can spin up meetings in channels. You can have internal meetings, external meetings, both internal and external people. So you can now set up teams to be able to communicate externally. And we're starting to see a lot of Microsoft's open source communities that they have around Teams and Sharepoint, et cetera. They've been migrating their public channels from Skype into Teams, which I think is really cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. There's also your video chats that you can have within Teams, super cool, and they've added sort of a nice new feature, which not work here. I wouldn't want to work here, which is you can blur the background. I think that's been really helpful for a lot of people. So those are your general communication components. Now, underneath that is all of the things that enable in particular, your channels and your communication and collaboration. Within a channel, you can have tabs, you can have bots within Teams, you can have apps, you can create these connectors, and this can all be enabled and utilized by search. And we'll get into tabs through search at a later point. So just think that you can extend your teams to be even more useful, more collaborative, and empower your team to do more than just chat, because there's so much more that a team needs to do besides chat.
Hey, Eric, we have a couple questions come in that I want to throw your way. So first one is around security. What type of security do you have around third-party apps within Team? For example, Zoho projects.
Yeah.
This is from our friend Mandy Oliver Lopez. Thank you, Mandy.
I'm probably not going to get the answer that you're looking for or the detail that you're looking for. So effectively, I'm going to answer kind of a pre-question around just general security. Every single team is backed by an Office 365 group, and your group has two types of people, owners and members. That's what an Office 365 group is. So if you wanted to connect to a third-party application, effectively, there's going to have to be some sort of authentication that can flow through to that. And that depends on how that third-party app is designed. If it's designed to work with Teams, they will come up with a way to authenticate it with Teams, probably some sort of token passing to get your Office 365 credentials somehow using OAuth or something to properly authenticate itself with that third-party application. But you can't just take a third-party app out there and just shove it into Teams. You need a app that was really designed to work with Teams. And a lot of these third-party apps, the real popular ones, Zendesk and a whole bunch of others, Salesforce, they've got connectors and ways to work within Teams securely so that you have a single sign-on experience. And once you're logged in through AAD, those apps are designed to help you authenticate. That's not to say it's going to be necessarily easy. And I'm sure that there are some situations where you might have authentication set up in such a way that it's going to be more difficult to get that single sign-on experience to occur.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. And then we had one other question come in from Vaughn. I'm not going to pronounce your last name because I am horrible at pronouncing names, so I'm just going to save myself the embarrassment. But Vaughn is your first name. Thank you, Vaughn, for sending this question. Any way to restrict channel management, creation, etc.?
Yes. Absolutely. So at a team level, well, maybe not to the granularity you want, but at a team level, you can say that users cannot create channels or only owners can create channels. You can even set up certain teams so that people can't even post to them. You can limit only owners can post to a team. And where this can be valuable is you can have something called an org-wide team. You can create a team that basically everyone already is a member of. There are limits to that, which is this 2,500 person limit. So if you're a large organization, if you're over 2,500 people, you won't even see this option. It's a limitation. Hopefully Microsoft will address this at some point. I'm not quite sure on that. But anyhow, this is where you get to that mid-size kind of thing. But yeah, you can definitely control, maybe not the granularity you want, but you can control who can create channels and who can do other things, such as add apps or add tabs and things like that.
Gotcha. And then Vaughn added not teams, but channels. If that helps out your answer.
Yeah, no, within channels, you should be able to, you can limit, within a team, you can limit who can control who can add the channels. It's in the team settings. In a team, you can go into its settings and you can configure a whole bunch of stuff.
Absolutely. And then I'm going to do a third question because rule of threes is always good. And then we'll let you move on.
Yeah.
This is from our friend Ruben Ortiz. Thank you, Ruben, for sending your question in. Can you create a bot or automatic notification to team members or users to indicate that you are out of office after they try to chat with you on Microsoft Teams?
Oh, I love that question. I don't have a ready answer to you. My gut is yes, you could. Through connectors and through bots, through connectors in particular, I would think you can. But I do not know. You have to have some sort of hook, and I love it. Love the question. I'll have to think about it. I'll try to get you in the show notes later a more detailed answer so I can think about it. Because I might spend the whole next half hour kind of thinking through that whole topic.
Yeah, if you guys aren't careful, man, you'll get Eric going on a rant. So
yeah,
save that for another time.
My team is well aware of that. They know that I can be verbose in some fun ways. Okay, so let me go ahead and jump right into a demo, and just keep the questions coming, but let's move on and save a few up here. So what I've opened up here is the Teams app, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this. Really, what happens over on the left-hand side, we see the things that we care about here. When you first come to this, or you definitely think about this when your users first come to this, this can be really intimidating. They have no idea what to do. They're really going to see a blank screen potentially, and they don't know what all of these activities through the three dots really mean. The things that are really, to me, important are the Teams tab itself, the Teams, and that's going to get you so you can see all of the teams that exist within your organization or that you're currently joined, excuse me. And at the bottom, you can then join, you can then start to join teams. Our chats component, that's where you're going to have those one-on-one or two, three, whatever. You can have an ad hoc chat of 2 or more people, basically. So that's where those chats are going to live. And then you have your activity. Now, activity is one of those, you either love it or you hate it. And I think in this particular Dev 10, I don't have any activity. Your activity is conversations that have occurred within the channels that you're a part of. The channels that you're a part of, where you've been mentioned that you've been favoriting. So the idea here is you can see things that are happening around the world that you're in, the components that the teams that you're a part of, but that you weren't necessarily directly chatting with. So your chats do not appear in your activity. Your chats appear in your chats, whereas your activity, that's where you're going to see the conversations that you have shown yourself to be interested in because you've been favored in it or because you've been joining those teams and been at or have been at mentioned. The meetings and the calls, I think that's a little more self-explanatory. You've got your calendar of meetings that will be coming up, and then any calls. Your files is the files that are stored for you in SharePoint. And there's some other really cool things. There's the 3 dots. These are native Teams apps. And I don't have good examples in this one, but some things that I thought are really super cool. By default, you should see a lot of these things. You should see some of these are out here. And one of them here is OneNote. When you click on OneNote, what's going to happen here is it's going to load up your personal OneNote. But the one I care about, I think is really interesting, is basically you can add OneNotes to all your channels, or to one or more of your channels. And you'd get a roll-up of the OneNotes that you're a part of, including a OneNote you might have been recently working with. I found that OneNote and wikis are very popular within channels. They're definitely heavily used over Pixelmill. And to be able to have one spot where I can come to quickly get to those, I think is super cool. So those are kind of hidden there in the little 3 dots, and can get a little lost. So let's go ahead and go within the teams. Within the teams, we might have a team. So I have here the team, awesome team. Within those teams, I can then see all of my channels. Now, I cannot do anything directly with the team per se. I mean, if I'm an owner, I can manipulate the team, but all of our conversations happen within a channel. So by default, when you create a team, you get the general channel. The general channel cannot be renamed. It cannot be removed. It cannot be moved. It's always at the top. That's life. Live with it. That's Microsoft's decision. Okay. Within a given channel that you have, you can then see at the top, you can have different tabs. By default, you'll typically have the conversations in the file tab. Depending upon how you set everything up, you can then go ahead and add more tabs. So maybe I can say I really want to be able to add a OneNote. And I really add a OneNote. I need to give it a title once this loads for me. If it takes too long to load, I'm going to skip it because you can play around with all of this stuff. Going to create a new notebook, team, awesome, team, general, notebook. Not the best name, but it works here because I do just want it specific to this. And when I save that, what's happened now, Teams is go ahead and creating a notebook. It's storing it over for me in SharePoint, and it now makes it available in this tab. And within the Teams client, now to get this in the browser as well, I automatically get the OneNote opened up for me. I don't actually have to open up OneNote if I don't want to. And I get a pretty rich experience here working with a notebook. And as soon as it's here, I then, of course, have it over in the native OneNote app as well. I could go for an hour on what Teams can do. I'm going to leave it at this because there's a lot of good documentation, but I think I just went over the 1% level of Teams so that you can get a quick idea of some of the basics of Teams. And I think most of you know Teams as well.
And Eric, I have a question. I'm going to jump in here and throw that out here. This is from our friend Igor. Thank you, Igor, for throwing out your question to us. Is it possible to view all created teams within the organization? Sometimes users are creating teams that already exist.
Yes and no. I think the quick answer is more no to you. It depends how you want to do it. You could actually do it in PowerShell if you were more of a tenant admin. You can get a list of all your teams. When you go ahead and you join or create a team, so if I want to join a team, I can I have to know the team to join. But if I create a team, what could happen is you could say, well, create from. And you actually get a list of all of the teams that currently exist. But again, this would only be ones I can see. So if there's a private team, I wouldn't see it. And I wouldn't necessarily see it even if I was just a general owner. I'd have to be more of a tenant admin to see everything. So to me, the answer to your question from when I go to my geek side, what I really want to answer from all directions is no. But if you were a tenant admin, you would see them here, or you'd be using PowerShell to do something like that. Or that's what I'd be recommending, is you would be using more of governance scripts to see what's going on. From your end user's perspective, though, not to the level I think you want. Okay, so the core scenarios of Teams. This is a source from Microsoft, and this is the way that I think they look at how Teams was designed to really help different specific areas of communication and collaboration. So they're really looking to enable project management, to help you and enable how projects can get managed, where you can have all of your conversations, all of your files for a specific project across an organization. So where you may be working across departmental boundaries or something like that. You can then bring in additional third-party apps such as Planner or something directly into the team, so you don't have to have all these different components. They're all going to be viewed through one specific viewpoint. They're also looking to really empower your own personal productivity, so that you can send messages and you can also you can receive your messages that you might have got that might sent to you when you were offline or something, but you can send these messages to people that were offline and they're going to get, I mean, similar to email, but it's going to be a little, I think, a little cleaner, and it doesn't have to have the formality of an email. It's just a message. Again, Skype for Business did something similar, but I believe that the way that Teams does it, it stores it in perpetuity in a better way and makes it more available in one specific cockpit in a way. But you can then take the Teams app and you can then, in one spot, you can get to other things that might be important, such as I showed you your OneNotes. That was what I showed you, the OneNotes app. That's not just your OneNote in Teams. That could be all of the OneNotes across your Office 365 tenant. I mean, that's super powerful. So you don't have to keep going to different areas. You're able to really get your own productivity. You can improve your own productivity because you've got one spot to go look at. You don't have to go to all these different areas. And then they're also looking to extend the meetings that you have. So you can build momentum before your meeting even starts so that you can start to prepare documents and have chats with people to get those private presentations ready so that before the meeting, you're already up to speed, or you've already got a lot of your people already up to speed and well aligned so that that meeting can be more productive. You can then have your audio and your video chats so that you can, depending upon your organization, what you're looking for. I mean, we're social beings. A lot of times we want to see the people that we're communicating with. It makes us feel like we're not oceans apart. We actually are sort of in the same room, even though I might be talking to somebody in Sweden or in China or something like that. And then in those meetings, oftentimes you've got a lot of people some people that won't be able to join. So you can record your meeting, and you just click record. As soon as the recording is done, it's automatically posted for you in stream and then posted back into that channel so that you've got people who can go back and look at the meeting. And this is something that we use heavily. Basically, any conversation we might have around working on client projects or when we're working with our clients, we're going to record those conversations, of course, with full knowledge. We're telling people, hey, we're going to hit record now, because you don't get in that kind of trouble where you're recording someone that's inappropriate. But it really helps because you can then go back and see what happened, or what was that decision that was made, or that person that wasn't able to attend. I'm on the road a lot. Oftentimes I have to go back and look at what that conversation was about so that I'm able to properly advise my client, advise my team, and work with the project and whatnot. What's also cool, though, of course, is that you can then have, maybe in these meetings, you might open up your OneNote and you can capture some of those notes directly within OneNote or within the wiki, and it's already in the team. It's already part of that conversation. It's already part of that channel. There's nothing lost. It wasn't stored over there somewhere that you would know. It's still in one nice hub. So through these three core scenarios that Microsoft really sees, of course, we can then say, well, then for larger, mid-sized organizations, like what are some of the deeper things? Like, okay, great. Tell me some of the teams I might be creating that might actually help drive some value. And when I say larger organizations here, that's not fair. I mean, smaller organizations, we do this. We have marketing, we have sales, we have customer support, we have these teams, within our organization that's definitely not considered a large organization. And but at the same time, I see some of these as being where the larger an organization gets, even the more valuable that I think these teams can become, and where they can have more channels that can granularly define some of these things. So to me, some of the real high value ones that I think are super cool, where you can have things like a customer support team, so that all of your customer support team can be in one team, and they can have different channels around different topics, so that maybe when you're dealing with a particular customer problem, you can go to that channel, you can go to that team, go to those channels, and you can quickly help share knowledge. You can help get answers to things, but that knowledge is then stored in perpetuity. We've been trying this in email. That totally didn't work years ago. We've been trying this using other third-party applications, but they're separate. Here you might have something that can be in line with all of the other organizational collaboration that you may have. I think sales and marketing are other two really huge use cases here, where you might have a marketing team that has to work across organizational boundaries to create marketing efforts. They might need to talk to engineering teams. They might need to talk to design teams. They need to talk to SLT to get buy-in, etc. And you can create this team, different channels, maybe different channels for different events that are going on that you're going to be having, or recurring marketing efforts you may have, and you can communicate, collaborate. You can set those meetings. You can store those files that might be necessary, those assets that might be necessary for events, all cleanly into the file section within SharePoint. Sales as well makes total sense, where you've got your sales team can come together and they need to be able to communicate with additional people within the organization. Maybe they have to work with engineering to be able to understand how to be able to put together the proper sales proposals or something like that. Totally makes sense to me. And of course, the other ones that are here, human resources, I really want to see a time where I'm able to go to Teams in an organization of 100,000 users. I can go to Teams. I can talk within a Teams channel to a bot to say, I need to request sick leave, or how many more days of vacation do I have this year? I want to do that in one spot. I don't want to have to go to a portal. I don't want to have to go find it. I don't want to have to call up HR. I'd love to be able to stay within one client application, that being Teams, be able to go to the policies component in HR, the vacation policies component within the HR team, et cetera, and I can get those questions answered for me in ways that really make sense, and really looking forward to that. Definitely engineering as well. I could see teams where it's not just an engineering team, but you might have a larger team for larger projects. Maybe say you were trying to figure out what was wrong with the Boeing 737 MAX. You might create a team for that, where you're going to have all these different channels that might go ahead and pull people together and say, hey, what's going on? You're going to have marketing come in to help save Boeing's brand, and you might have engineering try to figure out what was wrong with the software update, et cetera. So I can see where teams can really help break down a lot of barriers, because you have this one spot where everybody can come together and just store everything. If you want to get the source on this, or I'm obviously providing the link as much as possible to where I'm getting this material, so that you can dig in more, because this was one screenshot of a larger article they provided. So I think this is one of the more important slides too, is thinking through, why does my organization need teams? These are some really good scenarios, I think, where teams will make sense in organizations from 2-3 people on up all the way to the hundreds of thousands of the multinational 100,000 plus organizations. Good. All right, so
I'm gonna need a little break to sneak in a couple questions. I've got a quad pod of questions from people, right. So I will try to, aside from using fancy words, we are going to step back a little bit in terms of the content you were talking about. I think these are great questions. Let me also get my camera on so people can see my bright, shine face while I ask questions. This first question comes from...
Questions means you guys care, and I appreciate that.
Exactly. So this first question is from Michelle Martin. Michelle, thank you very much for throwing in a question. Is the Onenote connector the same as the OneNote button in the left nav?
My answer is yes. I don't. Yeah, I mean, basically yes. The data is the same. The actual code base probably is not. So the idea being there that the OneNote connector is really going to be used to connect your OneNote to that specific channel, so that you can take a channel and point it to a specific OneNote. That to me is where that connector gets involved. Whereas what you saw on the left-hand side was a native team app, so that you can see all of your OneNotes in your tenant. So I'm going to actually say the answer to me, the way you worded it, is no, but the data is the same, and you can still basically work with the data in the same way. You can still link OneNotes directly into channels, and you can have an existing OneNote, and you can just point a channel to a OneNote that already exists, or you can create a OneNote directly for that specific channel. And that the icon on the left just shows you all of your OneNotes, including the one you just created.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Next question comes from James Sloan. James, thank you for your question. Admin options, teams associated with the user, metrics on teams usage. Kind of a multi-part question there.
What's the first question? So teams.
Admin options.
Yeah. What about?
And then teams associated with the user.
Teams. So you want to see all of the teams that a user is a member of. I do not know the answer to that. Someone probably does on the call, and I'll let them add the comment. But I will find out for you as well, and I will post it. And I'll post the details as to where it is. Most likely, I believe that's going to have to be some sort of PowerShell kind of graph call. Because I think you can go to a user. Yeah, I think you can go to a user and find out what teams they're a member of. You can definitely find out what groups a person's a member of, but this is more of an admin thing. I mean, not everyone's going to have access to this kind of thing. I do not believe there's a UI for it. What was the second question?
Oh, oops, let me go back to that. Where did it go? So yeah, so many questions here. I'm losing track of where I was.
I love it. I really do. Questions are good. Means we hit a really good topic, and I do think this is an important topic.
Definitely. Where did it go? Metrics on Teams usage. That was the third part
Yeah,
of that question.
there's a little bit of analytics, but it's very minimal. I know that there are organizations trying to figure this out, and I know Microsoft needs to do this. In the Teams administration, the tenant administration, you're going to get a little bit of usage to find out what's being used, but it's pretty minimal. It's not. I don't think it's the granularity that a lot of us want.
Gotcha. I'm gonna save some of the rest of the questions for later because
Right.
there's a lot more coming in now, but I want to make sure you get through your thing. So everybody who's asked questions, Lionel, Vaughn, Sydney, I see your stuff in there. We will get to you guys at the end of the session.
We'll find a way. Absolutely. Okay, so how are we going to roll this out? Like, what's the strategy you're going to want to use as an organization of any size to truly get the adoption you need? I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we want to build. We need to build a solution for our organization that people are going to use. If we've got this tools, we've got this power, and we want to create this communication collaboration platform, how are we going to do it? The recommended way is really a three-stage approach. So I'll quickly give you the links here. There's the getting started. I gave you some good links. And the second one there is this flip book that Microsoft created, which is interesting. It's actually kind of cool. They're definitely, I wish it was a PDF or something, but we'll show that. Once you start to get started and you start to play around with it, you're going to go through an experimental phase. You're going to start to see what works. You're going to slowly grow out teams to larger group within your organization, and then see what works. And you're going to play with this a little bit. It's not what I guess I'm going to be getting at here is you're not going to just build teams up in a bubble and then all of a sudden just release it to your organization and say, everyone, here you go. That's a recipe for a failure, I do believe. So the third phase, though, that's that scaling phase. So there's getting started, started playing with it more and experiment to see what works, bring more people on. And then you start scaling it and scale like steps, not everybody all at once. All right, so I gave you the links. I'm going to have them more. Let's go ahead and get to some of the details of what this means. So when you get started, one of the first things you really need to do is watch the prerequisite. So there's some licensing issues. There's some basic infrastructure issues. In order to be able to communicate with teams, your corporate firewall might need to be adjusted. Microsoft gave a lot of information on this that goes into details about explicitly what you need to do to enable teams. If you want to do the telephony components, there's some extra things you need to do that you'll want to think about. Now, when you're setting this up, you may want to start first with some sort of developer tenant, something where it's not your production tenant, not your organization's tenant. Now, I consider this part of a developmental task. I consider this figuring this all out because you're developing something. I think this is a good use case of Microsoft's Office 365 developer tenant. This is a free tenant for a year designed for creating proof of concepts and developing things out. You get 25 licenses for that year that are, I think, E5, so you can really play with it. This is absolutely not for production. Absolutely not. I would never do that. But it's really great for creating a playground. Any of you could create this within 10, 20 minutes. You would have a full Office 365 tenant that would just be you, let's say. And you can start to see what this would look like. You can log into Teams. You can add a few people in. You can give them credentials, and you can start to see how this will all work. Start working with bots and connectors and without touching your production tenant. So highly recommend that. So after you get some of these basic prereqs out of the way, then you need to pull together a team. This team is, you're not going to roll out teams in an organization of more than a few people without more than one or two people in this team. You really need an executive sponsor. You're going to need someone from your leadership, senior leadership, to sign off and be a part of this, to say, yeah, I'm going to help enable this, because Teams is going to work best if it can roll up into the organization at some point, and getting that executive buy-in is going to be really important. Probably those of you on the call are going to be one of your success owners or a program manager or something, or maybe a champion. You're here. These are the people, typically the one or two or three people that are really going to start to just dig into this and say, I'm going to own this. I see the value of Teams. I see why we're doing it. I believe in that messaging. I'm going to make this be successful. And in my organization, that's what happened. We were on Slack, and a few of our delivery team needed better ways to communicate. They were on Slack, and then they looked at Teams, and they started to play with it, really without my knowledge, not in a bad way. I mean, they told me they're going to do it, but they went and played with it. Once they had some stuff together, they got my sign off, but then once they played with it, they came back to me and said, look at what it is. And they were passionate about it. They saw the value of moving to Teams, and they convinced me pretty quickly once I played with it. And now I've become the champion of Teams within my organization, effectively just saying, we're going to use it. And I think that's a very common use case that is very possible in a lot of organizations, that once you show some of your senior leadership really in that phase 2, the value of this, you're going to get some really good support. Now, if you do it wrong, I obviously, resistance, I understand all that stuff. But get together a team of some people that are going to help you drive this solution and help you build it forward. Once you do that and you've got this, you're going to need to understand how teams and channels work together. So there's some good documentation on this. It's not all that difficult, but you do want to understand what a team is, how channels work within teams, how channels can get created, the permissions around teams, how apps and bots and stuff are added, the permissions around it. There's a lot of things to think about that you really should get a good understanding of, and you absolutely do not need to be an IT pro or dev to do this. Absolutely, end users, power users can learn this if you just invest a little bit of time, and you don't need to be using PowerShell to do most of the stuff. You're really using the UI to be able to do this kind of thing, which goes back to that developer playground. That's where you can play with this kind of stuff. And so then once you kind of got this, you might want to go back and look, okay, well, so what's the readiness of teams within my organization? Am I in an organization that's extremely resistant to this and we know that this is going to be more challenging? Or are we seeing a lot of hunger for this kind of communication collaboration? Maybe we're already on Slack and we're saying, well, there's these issues where we know we want a tool like this. I mean, that might really help you in the next phases on how you're going to experiment with this and build it out. So when we get on to phase 2, what we're looking to do here is start to play with this more. And I think a lot of this starts with, okay, now it's time to build a champion program. It's time to find more people within your organization that they're not going to be the administrators per se. They're not going to be the big senior leadership. These are going to be your champions, the end users who have a passion for technology and can see the value of this. They're the ones that are going to be looking to help guide their group, the people that they're around. I mean, they see the value of this. And this kind of happened in my organization. I mean, this is where I became the champion because I saw the value in this and I wanted to start showing people what I saw and saying, hey, there's these cool things. This is making my life easier. We should use this more this way as well. There's this really cool Microsoft Office 365 champion program that helps champions champion all of Office 365, so I highly recommend you look at that. Now, the way that your champions kind of fit into this whole thing was through some of like the business scenarios. If you're working with champions to help them, they're going to help you identify some of your solutions that should be built and start to play with those, and they're going to start helping highlight and share those success stories with the groups that they work with, so they can say, hey, we know we did that really well over here. Maybe we can do that here with this other team that we're looking to put together to do something within our organization. They're going to help you with that communication and training. You're looking for the champions that want to share these stories, and they would love to be able to go to the desk next to them and help that person understand how it is that they can create a chat or schedule a meeting or how they could add a tab to help them enable something, or, oh, hey, yeah, I just found this Onenote tab. It was really cool, and look at what I can do all in this one spot. I don't have to go off to a browser, and you know that frustrating thing we used to do? Yeah, we just saved ourselves lots of clicks and lots of seconds, and it's so much easier to get to. Your champions are going to be those type of people. So now in this experimental stage, it's time to define more of those use scenarios that your organization is going to do. Look at taking the high value use scenarios that I've already mentioned, look at the ones that Microsoft highlighted, and think through for you, what's really going to, how are we going to use this? What is it that we're going to be doing? And start to play with those. Start to bring some champions in to say, all right, we would like to create a marketing team. Well, you might not go to the marketing department directly and say to all of them, all right, we're all doing that. You may want to go to a specific initiative within a marketing team, within the marketing organization, and say, hey, for that next conference coming up, why don't we try this? And you put a champion in on that so that they have some leadership and some guidance on how the organization can use teams to further that effort for that specific conference, let's say. And now's the time to really start to think about governance. And we've already had some questions around governance. Who can create what? We should be able to post things. How are we going to set this up? I think you can have, I always get this wrong, it's in my show notes, it's 500,000 teams, or is it, it's a lot. You have a lot of teams. Users can only create so many teams. There's all these limitations you have to think about. I just remember them because I store them in the notes. So we'll look at that in a little bit. You want to think through, how are we going to do this? And what kind of teams do we want created? Do we want only certain people to be able to create teams? Do we want anybody to create a team? Do we want to have specific templates of teams so that when you create a team, it could be templated so that you can say, I would like to create this kind of team, and it would automatically populate with channels and tabs and apps and things like that. This is the time to really think through that. Phase 1, too early. Phase 3, too late. You've got to get some governance in place and start thinking through that. You want to go ahead and start onboarding those early adopters, the people that you think will be the sort of champions, like, maybe not champions, but these are the people that are going to see the value and they understand what they're trying to do and they've got this big need. Maybe they've been using Shadow IT to figure out how to do chat. They were over on HipChat before because it worked. Probably those are people that are going to be good early adopters here. You can move them over to the organizational approved chat platform, get them over there. Provide that onboarding support as well, so that as you bring people on, start to think through, how are we going to bring more people on and how are we going to support them? If you just deliver Teams to everybody and say go, most likely going to be a failure. Thinking through, should we create a 3-minute organizational video on using Teams? Should we post people to Microsoft has produced a whole bunch of video on this kind of stuff. And you point them to 3-4 of those videos over on YouTube so that people know exactly how to, here's your 10-minute overview of Teams and how our organization is going to use it. This is that time to really think through how you're going to help people get on into Teams. And then finally, and this is a finally in the sense of this never ends, you've got your rollout and your scaling. So at this point, you're going to want to start looking at and thinking through, okay, how are we going to scale this? How are we going to bring it out to the organization? How are we going to grow the platform? And it will never end. You'll constantly be doing this. And this comes back to, what are your definitions of success here? Because you may not know during phase 1 or phase 2 necessarily what is going to be true success here. I think at the end of phase 2, you should start to see, okay, what are we looking to do here? Now you should start to scale it. How are we going to define success? Do we want to cut down internal email by 80%? Well, that's a pretty good metric that you could actually measure with the tools that are out there. We want to see, we want to see a certain amount of usage or utilization. We want to we're looking for complaints in this department of this thing to go down. We want to see utilization of a third-party tool to change because people are moving over to Teams. We're looking to have team meetings here. We know that our organization has on average 1,000 meetings a month. Okay, let's cut that down, but we want to see those on Teams. So we want to see the Teams meeting utilization go up and our other team meetings, other types of meetings go down, etc. So without knowing where you want to be, you're never going to get there. This is time to define it. How are we going to measure success? How is it that we're going to determine if this is good or not? Providing feedback, for a channel for people to provide feedback is going to be really important. This is your time to think through that, because Teams is going to have to change. You're going to have to adjust it as your organization grows, as it evolves, and as Teams evolves. And so you're going to want a methodology, and it could be as simple as a form. Use a Microsoft form. Maybe it pushes back to a Sharepoint list that people can say, "What's wrong? What's missing? How can we make Teams better for you? Or what is the thing that you need?" And of course, they may ask for private channels. We'll get to that. And you'd be able to say, that doesn't exist yet. We know. We're working on it. Microsoft's working on it. We know. Have a plan to drive the awareness of Teams so that your organization knows that it exists. Provide that training for people and that onboarding as they work with Teams. And then also schedule in reviews where your leadership, that initial team that you created of your senior leadership on down to your success managers, et cetera. Schedule through monthly, quarterly meetings where you look through Teams and try to figure out what's going on. You can go into the Teams administration and get some metrics. You can get some utilization. You can figure out how many teams have been created. You can just see the list of teams that are out there. Have polls within your organization. How's it working for you? Figure out do your best to continue to try to figure out what's working, what's not, and how can you improve these particular platform. How are we on questions? Good spot?
We've got a few.
Right.
Yeah, let's knock a couple of these out. Let me jump back real quick. Let me also show my bright shining face. Okay, first question in this line of 3 questions that I'll ask you is from our friend Vaughn Zanchua. I hope I pronounced your last name right this time. Thank you, Vaughn, for sending in another question. Greatly appreciated. So what will happen if you create a new team, but there's a similar name already? Going back to naming channels.
Yeah, so I think the team actually can get created. It will create a group on the back end that will add a number at the end of it. Because when you create a team, you can create a team and associate it with an existing group, or it will create a new group. It will create a group based on the name of the team you're creating. And if you create Team Awesome again, Team Awesome, again and again, you'll just keep adding a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the end of that. I believe it does the same on the team, or it will tell you can't do it. I know that they've thought this through. I mean, we could probably quickly test it out when I go back to a demo. And I I just haven't done it. I haven't tried to create a team with the same name. I just know how groups work on the back end when you do the same thing.
Excellent. Thank you for that. All right, next question coming in. Vaughn says, okay, thanks. You're welcome, Vaughn. Okay, from our friend Lionel Wong. Lionel, thanks for throwing in your question. Appreciate it. Is my chat only seen by me and participants in the chat and not by all members in the team as opposed to channel conversations?
Well, yes, and the reason why is because a chat is not associated with a team or a channel even. That's the point of a chat. So if I have a chat with Michael, only he and I will see that conversation, period. I've not even tried. I don't think my other tenant admins that have access to that chat. I actually don't know. I think that's an interesting question. I'll have to find out internally for ourselves. That's a question we want to answer and then post that on our show notes. But a chat is not associated with a channel. If you're in a channel and you're in the conversation there, then anybody in the team can see that. That's how teams currently work. Every channel within a team is available to anybody in that team. Now you can have private teams. I can create a team that nobody can see. You have to be invited to it explicitly because it is a private. It's not public. A public team is something that anybody could join. They might not necessarily have joined it yet. So if I had a private team and it was Michael and Danielle on our marketing side, and I wanted to have then a conversation with Michael that I really didn't want Danielle to see, I would have to go to a chat with Michael. If I went to the channel, any channel within the marketing team, Danielle could see it, and she might not notice it, but she could in fact go find it, and it would be stored as a history in perpetuity, which is sort of the value. And I'll get in there right now. The idea that people are asking for is they want private channels. So within the marketing department, let's say, we may want to have an additional channel just for the senior leadership of marketing. That way we can have a marketing team for all of our people in marketing. We would have channels for specific people that only they could see, but then there would be other channels within that team that that everybody within that team could be a part of. And this was what we had two hours ago. We had a great discussion on this specific thing over on Twitter through a tweet jam that Christian Buckley hosted. And there's two camps. There's the camps that say private channels are a necessity, and there's another camp that is clearly saying absolutely not, it's going to be a disaster. So that's an hour-long conversation. But and I'm definitely on the yes camp. I want to see private channels.
Awesome. I'm going to save these last couple questions. I'll let you get going, and I'll bring these back around in a little bit.
Okay, so if you want to look at how to roll out, you need help for rolling out teams. So aka.ms/teams adoption. So I'm going to quickly show you what that is. Now, before I do that, I want to show you this lookbook. This lookbook, I gave you the link to this already in the slide deck. So this might be really helpful for you kind of in phase 1 or phase 1 and 2 to get your organization to sign off on it. This is really glossy. It's kind of nice. I wish it was a PDF so that I could actually print it out. But I mean, the links are clickable, but it kind of has some cool look. So if you really want to be able to show, ooh, isn't that kind of cool? If you want to work with your senior leadership to get buy-off on this, you can learn all about what Teams is, links to everything. They give you some good metrics. It's a good, I think, 9 pages or so of material. Okay, 11 pages. There's the phases I've been promoting here. Okay, it's 11 pages, longer than I thought. There we go. So I highly recommend you look at it if you haven't seen it. I've given you the link. It's basically teamsworkbook.azurewebsites.net. Okay, so then the other one, the team adoption guide, they give you the same exact 3 phases I gave you as well. And this is where I really recommend that you work through this. Now, there's a lot of material here. So if you go to phase 1 and you start to work through all of this content, and then really when you get into phase 2, there's even more. There's a lot of content here. And to me, if you try to read all of this in about a day, you may be able to get through it. The catch is by the time you get to phase 2 and 3, you might starting to get a little lost. So my suggestion really is read through it once, but then focus on phase 1. Read phase 2, leave phase 3 a little bit after you've read it once, because this is going to take you time. This is not a 1 day, 1 week kind of thing. You really want to build this out. But Microsoft gave great material. There's great videos here as well to help you through this stuff. Definitely go through your getting started in phase 1, help you get your baseline set as to what's going on. And they give you like just great stuff, even the kind of the team that you want to create. So highly recommend that to help you move forward with rolling out teams. Okay. So next, I thought it'd be really important to look at, okay, what's a great way to organize your teams? Because effectively, Microsoft Teams, as much as it has chat and meetings, et cetera, and voice, video, it is about your teams. So how are you going to do that? What's the best way to do that? And I really see three ways to do it. The first way I see a lot of organizations look is purely organizational hierarchy. Basically, you look at your departments and you say, hey, let's just break up teams based on the organization that we have. So we'd have our different department, that would be a team. We would then have our channels. We have a marketing department, we've got our IT department, we've got our sales department, we've got our HR, et cetera. They all would create these teams that they would live in, and it's very organizational hierarchical. That is not the way that Microsoft definitely sees this, and I have to agree with them. There's definitely some need per se. We'll get to that shortly, but I think the better way, the more preferred way for you creating teams within Microsoft Teams is to work more on a project or scenario basis. What this helps you do is it helps you cross those organizational boundaries. So some ideas here would be where you're creating the IT service incidents team. That could be, depending on your organizational size, maybe everyone might be a part of something like this so that they can go ahead and submit tickets as well. But then you might have a team where it's for the people that are supporting the IT services incidents that occur, because that might have to cross a lot of organizational boundaries. If something went wrong, and maybe it's not just the IT team that needs to solve that problem. They may need to reach out to other teams to help solve that particular issue. Again, marketing, I always go back to marketing because to me that's one of the key spots where I see teams just really being helpful. Marketing is rarely just the marketing department. Often marketing has to work with people throughout the entire organization. So if you created just a team just for the marketing department, you've really limited yourself. Instead, if you've created a team, maybe you've created a team for a marketing initiative or the marketing initiatives you may have, you can then have people that come in and can join from all these different areas and join in that conversation and be there. It may be heavily run by marketing, but it allows other people to get in. Or, if you have a product launch coming out, that might be a really good team. Or if you've got a specific product that's an issue, as I said, like the 737 MAX issue, like that'd be a great spot to have a team because you need to work with a lot of people. So I think working across organizational boundaries based more on scenarios is a better way to create teams. But there's also, of course, the hybrid option. The idea basically being that you might have departments that want to have their own team. Great. If HR department wants their own team where they can communicate and it's only them, right on, do it. Absolutely create that. But then go ahead and create, allow them to create other teams that are more focused on addressing the scenarios that exist within your organization. I think you'll have more success with the second piece there, really where you're looking to cross organizational boundaries. But it still there might be some departmental things. Within Pixmill, let's say we might have a services team where we deal with all of our client projects. And so that might be one team, and then we might have channels for each of our client projects. That may work in some scenarios. But we may have people across our entire organization who need access into that because when we're working with our clients, it's not just a delivery person. There's people across the entire organization that might be helping that specific client. So it wouldn't make sense just to have a delivery team team in our specific organization, because then we've locked people out of the conversation that may really need to be there to help enable the solution we're looking to build. There are some things to think about. You can create an organizational-wide team. You can create multiple organizational-wide teams. The catch here is there is that 2,500 user limit. And the way that basically works is if you have more than 2,500 users in your organization, you're not going to even see the ability to create an org-wide team, which I think is kind of a shame. So this is really for your small to mid-sized organizations. Microsoft has said that they're looking at that. They've said in their documentation that they're considering changing that. I have no clue. I really hope that someday they do allow that to just be nil. And there are people on the other side of the aisle that absolutely disagree with that statement I just made. They look at a team as being a spot for many-to-many conversations. And do you really want to be a part of a team with 100,000 members? Probably not. And that's the use case for Yammer. So if you ever ask, well, does Yammer have a place in this whole thing? Absolutely. I mean, and right now that's the only way. If you want to have one-to-many communication between large groups, and really if you have an org-wide team for 100,000 people, you don't want everyone chatting there. That's probably not a good use case there. So you may then want to limit who can post messages or who can create channels, because really that's probably going to be for your one-to-many communication. Or I could see a team, org-wide team with 100,000 people, your entire huge organization, where it's not designed for the chat component, that's designed for the portal component, where that's where you're going to have maybe the general team, which would have tabs, which would have these extra things that would be designed to help me understand my place in the organization. They might help me link off to my HR components. Basically, taking your intranet portal and putting it into a team, that to me would be that org-wide team. I'm a proponent of that. I certainly know a lot of people who absolutely think that what I just said is also crazy. And to me, that's a time will tell. We're not ready for it yet. I completely agree. But I think that Teams has a great opportunity to become that, as Microsoft has, I've heard them say, is that cockpit to your digital workspace. All right. If you look at templatizing Teams, so Microsoft has been looking to help us create scenarios for specific industries. And there's three in particular that I can highlight right now. One of them is they created a native app in Teams called Shifts, and I don't know if some of you saw it, and we'll look at it in a little bit. This is designed for frontline workers. Basically, it's designed for scheduling, and it is pretty cool. This is a replacement for Staff Hub. So if any of you are using Staff Hub or heard of it, it's still available in your Office 365 tenant, but it has been deprecated. Microsoft is saying they're going to be discontinuing new components of that. They're really looking to move you over into Shifts, which is a Teams native app. When we look at Shifts, which we'll look at in a second, one of the things I really would like to see is Shifts be a tab within a channel. I have not found that. So if someone has seen it that is possible, I know people have asked for it. I haven't seen it. It is really a native app. And there are ways that go way beyond this conversation where you can set up teams for frontline workers so that when they log into the app, Teams is configured more for them, where Shifts is more readily available, and they can interact and communicate, see their schedule, ask for time off, ask for shifts, take shifts that are open, etc., as well as have communication collaboration as necessary within the teams and channels that they may need. There's two other major templates that are provided that Microsoft has created. Those are for healthcare and for education. So the idea here is for, let's say, healthcare, they've created team templates for hospitals and wards. So you can create a team that is pre-designed to really help a hospital be organized. And basically they do that by pre-creating channels and pre-adding apps and tabs within those certain channels. Same thing for a ward. So the idea might be that you would have a ward or a department within the hospital that wants to be able to communicate, collaborate. And there's some catches to these templates. The first thing is that in order to create them, you need to use PowerShell, or you have to make a graph call. That's my world. You're in my dev world. That is not for end users to do, to be blunt. But once you've created a hospital team or a ward team, you can now, through the UI, create a new team using that existing team as a template. So when I look at these templates, I think they are really cool. I think they're a great place to start. They're more of a developer thing. So to me, this is where governance comes involved. You probably don't want everyone in your organization, if you're a healthcare industry, to be able to create a team for any kind of hospital or a ward. You'd want them instead to be able to be that to be a little more governed. So I gave you some links to that stuff. There's education as well that I think is pretty cool. Now, unfortunately for time, I'm going to have to skip the template. I just gave you the links that you need so that you can see all that. So don't worry. You're not really missing much. I just wanted to show you some channels. It's just that they're not really that important, so don't really worry about it. In the last 2 minutes that I have, the questions I'm going to have to skip, I do apologize. I will answer your questions in our show notes. So in the next day or two, you're going to get answers to all your questions. There's so much more you can do with Teams I haven't talked about. You can add tabs, you can add bots and apps and these connectors. You can also build all your own stuff. You can tie in Sharepoint framework now into your Teams tab, which is super, super cool. So think way beyond just having a conversation, but you can have bots that you can talk to. One of the coolest bots I've seen recently is Jane.ai. We don't work with them. I've not really talked to them. I've only seen their demos. Super, super cool thing where you can tie in a bot to a lot of external services, and then that can get tied into Teams. You can have connectors that allow services such as Salesforce, Twitter, even Azure DevOps post into Teams and communicate with you through your Teams and channels. Absolutely just way cool stuff. Some additional things that you can do. is extending teams beyond the organization. So this is where you're working with external users. You can definitely bring them in. I find this to be just a no-brainer if you're working with outside people, as you bring them into teams, and that way you can have all of your information all in that specific spot. One of the last things I want to do before we're out of time is look at the numbers. So I do have a slide here. I told you about this. Every single team is backed by a site collection. This gets back to Sydney's request around folders and too many files within folders. Basically, there's that 5,000 limit. That actually is not fully true if you index properly. I'll try to answer that in a longer email, in a longer response shortly. But some of the big numbers here is the 500,000 limit for how many teams can be created and how many channels you can have per team, which is currently 200. Let's see, private chats can have up to 50 people, which I think is quite a lot. And then even though you can have 5,000 members to a team, you can only have 2,500 members in a specific org-wide team. So we went through a lot of stuff. What I really want to show you in the last minute is I do got some sessions that are coming up, that some conferences I'm going to shortly that I would hope that you join me at. Sharepoint Fest DC is at the end of April. Sharepoint Conference is coming back to Vegas. That is in May. You can save yourself some money if you use discount code Overfield for either of those. So I look forward to it. And I'm going to be talking about some dev stuff as well as some team stuff as well. So with that, because we're really out of time, Michael, I'm going to shift it back to you. I really appreciate everyone sticking with me here. I would love to have another hour on this conversation. We'll have to figure that out next time. But I really appreciate y'all joining me this morning.
Yeah, hey everyone, thank you so much for sticking around. Fantastic questions that are coming in. I'm sorry that there's a couple we didn't get to.
Oh, you're muted.
Are you sure?
At least I can't hear you. Maybe it's me.
It might just be you. I think it's just you. I'm getting... Okay, so I had some great questions come in. We will get to those later in our recap. I apologize to Sydney, Vaughn, Starkey, Michelle. Sorry for not being able to get to your questions. We will get to those, I promise. Like I said, we'll do that. Our next session in April, we're going to have Christian Buckley coming back. He is also a Microsoft RD and MVP. He's going to be doing a great session on business applications, Power Apps, Flow, all that kind of stuff. That information will be up very, very soon. We're very excited to have Christian back. He's always a great person to have, so keep an eye out for that. Other than that, have a great rest of your Thursday, guys. Thank you again for joining us. We always love having you guys here. Great question, Kim, like I said. And we'll see you guys down the pipe. Thank you very much, everyone.